Hey, what's up, traders? If you haven't seen the last video, it was a free mini course, about 20 minutes or so, talking about the pivot point strategy. I highly suggest you look at that right now. I'll leave it up here. And the reason why is because we're going to look at Bitcoin, Ethereum, and XRP using that strategy and what to expect. And we're going to even back test it so I can prove to you that this works. This is the easiest way to spot support resistance levels, supply demand levels. And if you can spot that, you can pinpoint your entry. Let's dive into it really quick.
Yeah, I know I got problems, and I don't know where to go.
Guys, I want to make this really quick. We're looking at Bitcoin and I'm starting on the weekly time frame because I first want to see what direction we're in. We're obviously in an uptrend, right? So now that I know that I'm in an uptrend, my bias is a buy. And I know that Bitcoin typically rises in nature. And then two, I've seen a huge drop to the downside, which means that typically buyers is coming in soon. How soon? This is where the pivot point strategy comes in at. You will often find pivots in a trend that often retest itself. And this is simply big banks, hedge funds, and institutions entering into the market multiple times. This tells you that price is oversold or overbought in this case, where price wicked here 1 week and then the next few weeks later, it wicked here, causing a double top. And then you'll see a huge drop to the downside. Now, guys, remember, pivot points is all I want you to remember. Here's another pivot point. Price came here, shot to the upside, right? We see a pivot here and then also here. This marks as one pivot point here and then two here. There we continue with higher highs and higher lows. That's all we're doing. We're marking and finding these pivot points here. So if I were to draw a straight line across, this would have told you that there's a possibility sellers are going to come in and you're going to sell. Whenever you see some sort of hesitation, when you see buyers come in, this white candle and then a red candle, know that this is going to be a resistance level, same as in the past. Now, because we're in a higher high and higher lows, we're in an uptrend, we're going to continue to break that eventually, okay? Now, I usually draw this line all the way across so that if price comes back to the zone, this is going to be a significant level to keep an eye out on. That being said, we're in a downtrend here. And how far is it going to drop? I'm looking at this zone here next. This is our next strong pivot point. This is how I predict where price could go. Now, does this mean price is going to drop here? It doesn't mean that, but it does tell me that if price happens to drop to the zone, this is where it's going to pivot 9 times out of 10. So I'm simply setting an alert at this zone here, which you'll already see on my right side. And I like to set it slightly higher than the wick zones here so that I'm alerted when that happens. Simple enough, right? I can look back in the past here, look at the multiple pivot zones here. And guys, remember, I'm on the weekly chart. We see 1 here, 2 here, 3 here, and I can simply draw a straight line across. And how I draw the width of my rectangles all depends on the wick rejection and how high the candle shot up. So we can see here, this touched the top of my red rectangle. This was the middle. This was the bottom. So when price comes back down to the zone here, I know that it can come anywhere within the zone. This is all grabs for buying. And notice how if we dissect the zone here, and let's go to the daily time frame. And let's come back here. Notice here that we've had multiple double tops, and sometimes we even had triple tops. So we have 1 right here, 2, 3. If you know anything about double tops and triple tops, that is a reversal zone. That tells you that there is a rejection. So imagine you have a rejection here, a huge drop to the downside, pivot, another pivot. Another pivot. This is all I mean when I say pivot. Oftentimes when you find your pivots, you will find rejection. You will find times where you can buy or sell or even take profit. This is called institutional buying and selling. This is how you know when the institutions are heavily involved in the market. Now let's look at the next example. We're looking at Ethereum. I'm going to fix my chart up here. We're on the daily time frame and we're going to fast forward to current price here. Guys, remember pivot points. Simple. Here's a pivot here, pivot here. Pivot here, pivot here. This is all we're doing. Lower highs, lower low. Lower highs, what's the next? Lower low, right? But you want to look left for clues to make that determination if price is going to continue to drop. So let's start off on the weekly time frame. You can find your pivots a little bit more distinct here. Just going to fix my chart, and half the battle, guys, sometimes it's just to fix your chart just to kind of see these pivot points stand out. All right. So now that I've marked my pivot points, let's go ahead and clean this up a bit. Now, notice this on the left side, how we had price come up here, pivoted, shot to the downside. Same zone, give or take, pivoted to the downside. Same zone, pivoted to the downside. And when you have that, it predicts when sellers are coming in. This is nothing more than institutional buying and selling. I know that I should sell because it came at this zone here, pivoted, not only once, twice, but 3 times. You can call that a triple top. Eventually, price is going to go higher because usually Ethereum rises in nature and most cryptocurrencies, large cryptocurrencies like Ethereum and Bitcoin. All right. Look at this here. If I scroll out even further, this would have told me that once price comes back to the zone in the future, and keep in mind, this is October 2021 right here. If I draw that all the way across, it matches here. It's not a mistake that price comes at this zone. This here, my friends, is called supply. This is your supply level. We have a supply zone, we have a demand zone. And oftentimes, guys, the wider the gap from when price came to a zone, and once price comes back to this zone, this will hold up as a supply zone and sell. Not only that, but the steeper the trend, the original trend, look how steep this trend is here back in 2021. So when we come back to the zone, 9 times out of 10, price is going to reject from that same level. And because this was originally steep and this is a wide zone here, right? We're talking about 2021, fast forward to 2025, that was 4 years difference. We're going to have a rejection steep as well. And it may not be as steep as this here, but we're going to have a steep rejection at least 3/4 to maybe half of the way. And we're already there. So that being said, I want to show you guys, this is called the B swing strategy. And I'm just simplifying it for you by showing you these pivot points where you can enter and exit using supply, demand, and even support and resistance. Here's our support and resistance zones right here. So let's say we see price dropping. This would be a level that I would think, hey, there could be rejection in the future if price came down from this zone and possibly reject. However, if we don't see any rejection and we see sellers still strong, this is why you don't get in just because it's at a level. You want to see wick rejection. You want to see buyers stepping in. But if you see red candle still printing, now your job is to see how far is it going to go. You look at the next pivot point here. 1, and I even see it straight across here. 2. So I can draw a straight line at this pivot point and connect it. This validates my possible entry here in the future. Now, the strongest pivot point that I would love to get in is right here. But then again, guys, remember, we're looking at the closest pivot point to where price is at. This tells me, just simply looking at it, I wouldn't do nothing to this trade right now unless it continued to make lower highs and lower lows, come to this level here where it pivoted not only back in June 2025, but then September 2024, strong enough. Even here, this was a pivot point. This is where I will look to buy. Now, how far would you buy? Oftentimes, remember pivot points. Here's one here. This was our resistance. And then I can look in the future. This was our resistance here. Just draw a straight line across, pivot points, okay? Pivot points are nothing but supply demand on the bigger time frame. And as you drill in, you will find this support and resistance zone. So I'm going to put resistance here. And those who are brand new, this is resistance because if you scroll in, you'll see price didn't break here week after week after week. Remember, this is the weekly time frame. So we're looking at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 to 11 weeks before it finally broke higher. And then if we dissect this zone, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 weeks before it finally broke out. So this is a solid zone, and I would take it temporarily from here to here. That's it. I would take it from here to there. Now, can price continue to rise above it? Absolutely. But this is a safe zone where you can take profit. This will be the best demand level here. This was back in April 2025 when there was a pause on tariffs. This here, my friends, is considered ground zero. I like to call it ground zero in our academy because the pause on tariffs told the economy it is time to buy again. Now, when there were tariffs in the United States that started, that was back in February 2025, and that was around this zone here where price was dropping. So a lot of stocks, a lot of crypto were dropping at that time. So notice how I just looked at pivot points. We're price action traders here at BK Trading Academy, and we like to simplify things like this by just saying, hey, look at your pivots, because oftentimes people struggle finding support resistance on a chart, and it can be confusing. However, if I draw a generic chart like this and say, hey, this is support, you want to buy at support. Yeah, it looks clean. It's simple, but the chart isn't always as simple. But if you look at pivot points like this in the past, where this was a previous resistance, if it comes back to that zone in the future, that will possibly become your future support, so on and so forth. Here was my previous resistance here, and then this will be my future support. Same thing. Let's take a look at one more. Let's look at XRP. And you can see I already have this drawn out. Pivot points, guys, let's spread this out. I'm on a weekly time frame. And I like when I see pivot points like this. I'm looking at a number of things. I'm looking at wick rejection here. Here's our wick rejection. There's a lot of wicks here. This tells us that sellers brought this all the way down, but they couldn't hold. Okay. So notice how you can draw a line, but then it kind of goes up a little bit, goes down a little bit, but it's still in the general area. So that's my point. You want to have your eyes adjust clearly. So I would draw my line similar to this. Okay. Now we do have a wick or two outside of my red zone, but this is the general demand level. So let's mark demand here. Guess what? XRP is right at this zone here. I mentioned in my Trading Academy here that price should reject from the zone. This is a strong demand zone. We have one rejection here in the past. This was in December 2024. And then we have another one here that was in around January 2025, another one here in February 2005. And then we have a multiple candles rejecting here. And I'm on the weekly time frame. This is week after week, month after month. So what do you think is going to happen when it comes down to the zone? Now, can it drop past? It can drop past this demand level, but it will not drop past without it rejecting first before dropping down. That's how strong these institutional levels are in the pivot points, okay? Same thing here at supply. Here's our supply zone here. I'm going to grab my rejection here. This is the highest price it's been. I'm even aware of this area is here as well. So this will be my supply zone. And you want to make sure you draw your rectangle as wide as you need it to encompass wick rejection, and then at least have in the back of your mind that price can go this high here, okay? So if price starts to reject and start to continue higher, I am pretty sure that price is going to eventually get back to the supply zone. With the economy being normal, no high impact news, it should absolutely come back up to the zone. Now, how fast would it come back to the zone is kind of hard to speculate at this point. So let's keep an eye out on XRP, Bitcoin, and Ethereum, simply looking at the pivot points. Guys, let me know in the comments if this makes sense. Our job here at BK Trading Academy is to simplify trading, and we can use indicators if we like to as confluence, simply meaning, hey, I already knew that this was going to happen, but I'm throwing on this indicator just to make sure. Okay, that's confluence. We want to make sure that your confidence in price action is respected by any indicator you throw on. My Bollinger Band shows that price is oversold. I can throw on a relative strength index here where price is also showing oversold. This tells me that, hey, price could come down just a bit more, right? Anywhere within this area, all of this area, if we look in the past, is all areas and zones where buyers start to step in. And then I even have this MA, which confirms that if my RSI line crosses, this can tell us that buyers are stepping in and that we're in a trend reversal. So guys, let me know in the comments if this makes sense. Other than that, I really appreciate you watching this. Share this video with someone who can benefit from this, and I will see you in the next video. God bless you.
Thinking about my